Hello, welcome to the Reasonably Effective podcast. We are up to episode 37, brought to you by myself, Uncommon Fossil, and 10 Types. Why don't you say hello?
Yep. Hello, everyone.
And we have, I think, a good episode for you. We're going to talk about one of our favorite cards from 151, or at
No,
least we'll
it's
find
not
out.
from one. It's not
Oh,
from.
that's right. It's not. I blew it already, but that's fine. It only works because of 151. I forget what set it's from, but, well, what set's it from? You
It's
know that
from.
off.
Yeah. So the card is Maractus
No,
from.
don't tell. Just tell.
Oh, whoops. Oh,
No.
it's Maractus. It's from Fusion Strike.
Fusion Strike. We're keeping the mystery. Fusion Strike,
The
but it's not
mystery is
you.
on screen. Most people are watching it on video anyway. Well, it's
Yeah,
on
it's on
my
our YouTube
screen.
channel. Yeah. But see, I was going to say this, and we're going to talk about Maractus first. Okay, and then we're going to talk about two of the three things that I didn't like from the first day I learned about Pokemon TCG. So we're talking about two of the three things I still don't entirely like them about the game, I will say. But
Letters
that's
and,
something to
and
look
numbers.
letters and numbers. Yes, and the math you have to do, right, with
I know
Maractus,
it's
it's a big
crazy.
math text. So, but we'll look forward to those other things that I haven't liked. Although, look, they're part of the game, and there's good things why they're there too. But Maractus from Fusion Strike, like you said, not a Fusion Strike Pokemon. So it's a basic Pokemon. Basic attackers are good. We both built decks on it this past week or so. We
Yeah.
kind of had talked about 151 and what was in it, and there is Snorlax and leftovers, which we'll be talking about, and what we could do with that. Maractus seemed like the play for us. It's got a basic Pokemon, single prize and it can do big damage. It's got Ditch and Shake for 2 energy, Grass, Colorless. It does. You discard a number of tool cards from your hand, and it does 50 damage per tool card you discarded that way. So potentially can one shot anything. It scales up obviously infinitely, or as many tools as you can fit in a 60 card deck. But it one shots anything on a single prize, so very nice option there. You want
Um.
to?
Yeah. One thing I want to say is part of why we are inspired by this about this card. Well, obviously there's new stuff that we'll talk about, but it's kind of like Blacephalon from Unbroken Bonds, often referred to as Baby Blacephalon, Baby Blounds, or just
Yeah.
Blounds. It might have even
Hmm.
had other names. I don't really know, but um, that card was a fun card that was similar. It was a basic Pokemon. It was a fire, and it did 50 for each basic fire energy you discard from your hand. So
Hmm.
that was similar. It had more tools to work. Well, okay, not tools. I didn't mean to set up that pun,
Right.
but it had more options available to it. It had Welder, Fire
Yeah.
Fire Crystal,
To
Giant Hearth,
accelerate.
and what? Oh yeah, Welder
Right.
too.
Well, to accelerate, and then Giant Hearth and all those things you're saying to get energy in your hand. It's harder to get obvious tools into hand now than it was back then for energy.
Yeah, and then the other main difference is that well, two other things. One, there were some amazing Pokemon that were very synergistic, or that could work decently well with it. Reshizard, Cramorant
Yeah.
V, and there are a number of others. And then also Fire Energy, obviously something you want in your deck anyways, versus tools with Maractus. You're not necessarily looking to have tools in your deck. They can be good, but they're an additional thing you have to add in.
Right. As you fill up your deck with tools, it just works a little bit worse. The other deck, which I'm going to say, which you're not going to like, that it reminds me of, in that
Oh.
is Malamar.
No.
It kind of feels like Malamar to me. I don't know if it does to you too. I like Malamar. You hate Malamar, of course. It's a single prize attacker. This is a basic versus a stage one. 2 energy versus 1 energy. They have different upsides, downs. Here you're discarding versus putting back in the deck, but it kind of feels and flows similarly, I got to say, to Malamar. I don't know if you agree or not.
I think it flows better than Malamar. As you know, I don't like Malamar. I never really found success with
Yeah.
it. Um, but now I think it's as good of a time as any to talk about Snorlax. Snorlax
Yes.
has its ability here, Voraciousness. Once during a turn, you may put up to 2 leftovers, which is a tool card from your discard pile into your hand.
Yep.
Leftovers is a tool, I suppose I'll say what it does, although it doesn't really matter. You never want to attach this, essentially, ever.
No.
Um, there are some certain niche scenarios where you do, but once at the end of your turn, if it's attached to the active Pokemon, you heal 20 from it. Um, it's honestly an interesting tool, one that I messed around with some, but it's not any. It doesn't have like any use in this deck, and you want it in the
No.
discard to be able to get back.
Right.
And then the other thing we should probably talk about as well is we both, or I think I brought up the idea of Maractus. You were very interested in it. It's
Hmm.
meant more so to be paired with Electrode from the set. I think I
Yes.
pressed the wrong thing. Oh, I misspelled it. Do you want to read that or should I read it?
I don't have it up yet.
Okay,
It's
there
an
we go. I
evolution,
got it.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
What's it evolve
So
from?
it involves some
Oh, there it
Voltorb
is.
here with Electrode 90 HP stage 1, 20, discard any number of tools attached to your Pokemon. It does 40 more for each tool discard in this way. One Lightning stage
Right.
1. So it has a lower multiplier. It's an evolution, but it is one energy, and it's from the same from
Right.
151. But I feel like Maractus is more fun.
Yeah, I need to try Electrode as well. I mean, if you look at the numbers, the multiplier is 40 versus 50, but it does add 20 to start with, which means for one tool you do more, and for two tools you're at the same HP level, same damage level, right?
Yeah,
You're
but
both at 100 with
that
tool,
like
with
100's essentially
isn't what you want
yeah, you're even
almost
looking. You're
ever.
probably want to hit like at least 110 to KO Kermit. And it
Right.
doesn't even help the math on like Comfy either.
Right. It gets you to 60 with one energy, but I don't know that
One tool,
uh well, with
or
one
it is
tool,
one
which I
energy
guess
tool.
if you're up against a Ralts, right, you might one shot that or something
Yeah,
like
there are a
that.
few
There's
Pokemon. There's a number of evolutions with 60 HP, but for the most part, it doesn't really matter too much.
right. So the big advantage is Electrode's one energy because the two energy is a negative, and we've approached that a little differently, I think, in our builds. So the two energies is the biggest downside to Maractus, right? But the multiplier of 50, there's not many things that do 50 per tool or anything, right? It's usually 40 or lower.
Um,
50 is a, it's
yeah,
not
for
a
these
lot, I
things
don't
that
think,
are easy
to get
stack.
into hands.
One of the things that is kind of similar, which is much higher multiplier. Things like
Mhm.
Blastoise EX or Ice Rider hit. I think they both one. No, Blastoise is 140, Ice Rider is 120, I believe. But then they have
Yes.
a max of like two, and you see
Right
things like
here,
that.
there's no limit to it. So it's the same as Chen Pao, right? Is that 50 per
No, Shinpao
or
is
is that
60
40?
per.
60. So that's higher, but
Yeah,
it's a stage two. And of
I mean
course,
it's different, you know.
it is. But but right. This is a single prizer. 50 on a single multiplier on a single prizer that's unlimited potential is very nice.
Yeah, I'll say
So
if this was only one energy, this would be, if not broken, it would certainly be a
yeah.
strong meta deck.
Yes. I mean, I honestly think it's almost a meta deck now. I know it's not getting attention, but I think the deck is actually pretty good. And I also think with the numbers, there's two things for a single prize deck. You need to be able to one shot the big Pokemon, right? You can two shot occasionally. You can take a two shot over the course of a game and still win as a single prize deck. You can't miss an attack, of course. That's one of the things. Can you set up attacks? That's the biggest challenge here. And then you also have to be able to stream attacks in a single prize matchup, right? Because that's always part of it too. Because there are some single prize decks around. If you miss turns in that, then it usually means you're going to almost a guaranteed loss.
Mhm.
So, and it flows pretty well.
Yeah, I want
It,
to talk
I,
about the and the single prize deck you're trying to beat is going to be Lost Zone. Lost Zone's a very difficult deck to beat because it's a
yes.
spread based deck. But I don't actually think this deck's too bad, as you do have yeah, Bravery Charm to give you more HP, which is useful. But and I think
Right.
this deck's okay against Lost Zone because it's a 50 times multiplier. So if you recover say three leftovers every turn, which is not that hard to do,
Right.
using two Snorlaxes and say like one's prized, then that's enough to pretty much one shot all their single prize attackers.
Right. So it's just a matter of if you can't get knocked out every turn probably, but in that matchup, single prize, you can attach the Bravery Charm for big HP Pokemon. You don't want to attach the Bravery Charm because you want the extra 50 damage, but you're going to be one shot anyway. So, it's situational, but it's not overly complex, I don't think. Within it. And yeah, I would, you said there are a few times I've benched attached leftovers, maybe once in the time I played it in this deck, not much. It's not very good. And honestly, it's not a very good tool in general, right? I mean, I haven't really
I think it's interesting.
tried
I
it
think
in
it's
other decks
interesting
yet.
as like a tanky tool. When you compare it to, I mean, there are certain things you can compare it to. You can just compare it to Potion, which has actually seen play, which heals
Hmm.
30 for as one card, one item. A tool's not an item, but they're similar. and so this can heal more, but
Yeah.
obviously it's over a longer period of time. And
Yep.
then you're comparing leftovers to you mentioned this, I believe, before the start of the podcast: rigid band,
Yeah.
full face guard, there pot helmet. There are a number of cards that kind of like it, that like reduce damage. So
Right.
I think leftovers has potential, but we've talked about this I think multiple times in the podcast started.
Yeah. And well, leftovers works on any Pokemon. Those other ones you just mentioned are specific to certain
Yeah,
types of cards.
that is true.
So yeah, but you're right. It's not about leftovers. So you have with the deck. So four. So I play three Snorlax, four Maractus, three Snorlax, and obviously four leftovers. I assume you have the same count of those.
Yeah, I do.
Just it. And then the next question. Well, the other thing is the engine, which I don't remember your engine at this point. I ended up playing Laypart engine. Initially, I
Oh.
did a Curlia engine, and I posted on uh, was it PokemonCard.io, right? The deck
Mhm.
site, and then a comment from someone will say, "Hey, you should play Laypart, not Curlia." And
Okay.
I think they're correct. And obviously,
You
I
could be
switched to
correct.
it.
I see why.
You
I mean,
can
it has more
attack with it.
HP. For those of you who don't know what Life Red is, it's
Yeah,
Curlia, except it has 100 HP, right?
right. It's a dark type instead of psychic,
Yeah.
and it has 100 HP. Now you can't get it with level ball, which I think I played level ball initially, so I switched out the level balls at that point. If I don't remember the original build. So it's 100 HP, and it's a retreat cost of 1, where Curly is a retreat cost of 2, and that's a big plus as well.
Yeah, and then you can attack. I think you were saying this. You do 60 for
Right, for
two
2 colorless,
colorless.
whereas you can't attack with Curlia
Yeah,
in this
which
list.
is not particularly good. As you're saying, 60 isn't that good of a number to hit. It does KO Sableye. I believe
Right.
that should be weak, but yeah,
And
it's
look,
not great.
there are times you come up just short with a Maractus too. You know that too, right? So there's
Yeah,
times
that's
60 will
fair.
finish something off. So it's not what you want to attack with, but it's better to have. I think the upside's better than the downside with having Liepard over Curlia.
Yeah,
And I like.
I run one level ball. I'm currently running level ball on Curlia.
Are you Curlia? Okay,
hmm
you're Curly as well. And I like the fact. So you use Curlia
Yeah, in my
with a.
video, I played Barrel. I want to talk about, and I played a
Okay.
different build. Did you start with Barrel as well? I think we were talking about it, and we said Barrel was the idea. Did you?
I think I very quickly went to Curlia. I might have actually started with Curlia beginning, which you did a barrel, and I like the fact that you with the Snorlax recovering and the discarding the leftovers. I like the discarding engine better. I gotta say. Plus, I think as the game goes on, it still stays strong, Curlia, but it's better from the beginning. I think. But you want to talk about the barrel some?
Yeah, so I'll say Barrel is bad. It didn't really work. It doesn't draw as much. Or it doesn't allow you to get these big hands, and big hands are the kind of idea of the deck. Um, yeah, but
Right.
Barrel didn't like work super well. I've changed the deck up a bunch. Um, because but I don't know, but Barrel also didn't work super well. But and then
Okay.
do you want to talk about energy acceleration in the deck? Because I think we have different ideas.
Yeah,
And also I want
because
to
it.
say I have not played this deck too much. I played it somewhere between probably 5 and 10 games, maybe a little more. Um, Occasionally it works really well. Um,
Yeah.
it is a bit of a building deck as well. Near the end of the game, you're probably going to be hitting a little more. Um,
hmm
but you can like run out of damage, run out of tools other than leftovers.
Yes, that is true. But yeah, that's a good point. So we'll talk. I want to talk about the number of tools in the deck then first, because you running out of tools it can happen, but you can still win potentially. The biggest problem is if one of your leftovers is prized. I find because the leftovers recycle every time, so that's a base of 200 damage, and that's not a bad base. And even
That's
as a
very
single
good.
prize. And even as a single prize, if you can only do 200 late game and have the two shot, you still can close out the game potentially. So, but I play 12 tools. I play 4 EXP share, which I'll attach some because you do need to. It's 2 energy, so that has value, and then 4 bravery charm. So 12 tools in total. So the leftovers can recover. The others you can't recover. Um, at least not the way I built the deck. You could play Roseanne's
Backup,
whatever.
yeah. There's a few ways of recovering them, but they're not great ways. Originally, actually, Maractus was intended. It had a partner to be paired with in the set it came out in. There was Grand Ball, which is a stage one on playability that let you recover 2 tools, but especially without Scoop of Net, it's really bad.
Right.
Even with Scoop of Net, it was still bad.
Yeah, I mean, right. With Scoop Up Net, you could now. It's not really viable at all, I would say. And this Snorlax is much better. So 12 tools. Obviously, you want to use those tools that aren't leftovers very carefully because you can't get them back. Um, you want to obviously usually get the number to get the knockout. Sometimes if you're going to come up short by one, then maybe you just use your leftovers and save the other tools in case they switch up, right? You got to kind of think through some. Tool management is certainly a big deal. Then I play a couple town stores. I don't know if you do the same.
Yeah,
Actually, no, I play four.
Yeah, I also
Is that
play
what you do
four.
too? Yeah, and that's the new a stadium from Obsidian Flames that you can search your deck for a tool card each turn, right? Which sees some play, but not a ton of play. But it certainly has synergy with this deck. But you were talking about energy acceleration, and so I've done a split of things where I think you're all in on the one way. I play Raihan 3 Raihan because that's very good, right? For any deck with basic energy, if you're knocked out last turn and it's single prize, you're going to get knocked out a bunch. Accelerate energy from the discard pile to one of your Pokemon. Search your deck for any one card. So very good there. But then I also play two Gardenia's Vigor, and I actually kind of like it in this deck. When it came out, I was hoping it would be good because I remember Welder well, but Gardenia's been a big disappointment. But part of the usual problem with the Gardenias is you need to accelerate 2 energy to make it work in your deck. Usually it's a 3 energy attacker that you're pairing it with, so you got to accelerate 2 and attach one here. If you only accelerate one sometimes, it's okay. It still gets you to where you need to be in the energy race a lot of times. So I like Gardenias. I'm playing 2 Gardenias, draw 2 cards, and accelerate up to 2 grass energy from hand to one of your bench Pokemon. So I like that in the deck. I think I want to keep the Gardenias going forward too.
Yeah. So in my video deck, I want to point out one comment, not in bad faith, but so I originally had the only energy acceleration other than EXP share was Raihan,
Mhm.
to which someone said I should
Yeah.
cut Raihan from the deck, which I said like
Okay.
no.
No, you
Um,
right.
I've actually reduced the number of Raihan, I will say, and I have not added Gardenias. EXP
Okay.
share is something that you can use, and it's a good card. But
It is.
obviously it reduces the damage you do, and you only have 4 of it, which is honestly like enough. And like if you attack with like 4 or 5 Maractus, that's often enough. But um,
Yeah.
because like something else to get KO'd. But I've added in something else. I've added
Okay.
Leafeon V, which I think is interesting. It's
Wow.
very interesting. Um,
Okay.
because I found that without it, you wouldn't be
Yeah.
able to attack as easily. Like often at turn two, you'd be missing attack. How are you consistently attacking turn two, and then
Pretty
turn three as
much.
well? Like, are you attacking turn two and turn three?
I
Or like,
think so. It's been a little bit since I played the deck. I think I did. I think when I first built it, I did include a Leafeon, I gotta say. I assume you just have one copy, right?
no, I have two because I played
Okay,
2 copies
two.
of Force Seal Stone. So I need a target for
Okay.
that. Originally, I played Pidgeot V.
Hmm.
Pidgeot V does
Yeah, I remember
essentially
that.
nothing except it leaves. But that's
Right.
nice. It actually allows you to the tool goes back into your deck,
Right.
and it doesn't give up 2 prizes, assuming it leaves. Um, but then Leafeon, I found it to be pretty solid. The
Hmm.
energy acceleration's nice because you need to obviously be attacking. And I've
Yeah.
dropped to 2 Raihan because I realized if you're playing Raihan, and I don't
Mm.
know about Gardenias, but I mean you're only getting 2 cards, um, and they're not
Yes.
probably the cards you want. You're not going to end up with a massive hand, which is what you need. So I've upped to the supporter count. I play well. How many
Okay.
support? I play 4 Iono and 2 Serena. I've considered adding research,
Hmm.
but I realize you want these big hands, and you want to grow a big hand. And Raihan and Gardenias don't really
Hmm.
get you there in that same way. Whereas if you don't need to play your supporter to accelerate, you're in a better position.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, Raihan helps you stream attackers once the game's going.
Yeah.
Uh, I will say, well, supporters, you asked me, I play 4 Iono, and then I just play the 3 Raihan and the 2 Gardenias. That's it for supporters because because 12 tools, the deck space is tight. Because I do play 4 Ultra Ball, 4 Nest Ball, and of course a couple Switch and Super Rod. Because I assume you got to play a couple Super Rod because
Yeah.
You got to get back attackers plus energy over the
Wait,
course
sorry,
of the
what was
game.
your ball search as well? Because I did something a bit different as well.
I have a four ultra ball, four nest ball, and that's it. That's what I got.
Okay,
Four
so I
four.
play four nest ball, one level ball,
Yep.
and then I play four battle VIP pass. A bit of
Okay.
a spicy
Wow.
card,
Going
not
high
like just
roll.
not like
Hmm.
not rogue and spicy, but like we don't like battle VIP pass. A lot of people don't, and we're gonna talk about that later, I think. Um,
Hmm.
but
I mean, in a
yes,
deck like this, I don't mind as much. I don't play it in it, but because you have for you the
earlier.
curly as you're discarding it. So for decks that don't have discard that have that dead card, especially if you play with barrels, right? Then you look at this battle band P pass that's no good. That's actually clogging up your barrel. So, but where you can discard it, I think it's okay.
Yeah, so I found it okay. And then what's
Now,
your do you play gift energy?
no, I'm just going basic energy. I'm a
Yeah,
simple
because of
kind of guy.
gardenias,
So
right? That's part of why.
yes, gardenias. I play 10. What's your energy count,
Yeah,
by
I
the
also
way?
play 10, but I play 8 grass and 2 gift. Maractus is 1 grass, 1
Okay,
colorless. Gift
right.
is when you're KO'd, you draw until 7, which is pretty good.
Yes.
As I said, you want to get these big hands, you'd use gift energy,
Hmm.
and you get 7 cards, draw a card, and then you can curly on top of that and have a very good chance of ending up with all the tool cards you need, which I found is, I think gift energy is very good in the deck. At least as a 1 or 2 of.
Yeah, no, I like it. Like I said, but like you said, with gardenias, you want the basics. So, I think you either, yeah, I think without gardenias vigor, the gift energy makes a lot of sense. Um, I did try initial. I think when I first built the deck, I had the Leafeon V. I only played one copy, and I found I wasn't getting it into play turn one a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So, because you need that and a Maractus to make it useful. And if you can't get both those together, then all you've done is you've benched a multi-prizer that you don't want. You don't want to use Leafeon's power later in the game because it accelerates an energy, but then your turn ends. So it's very good turn one. Um, and then I was also thinking, do I play something to try to get that Leafeon V out of the deck, another supporter? But those aren't the best supporters
Yeah, I was
usually.
also considering like Penny. I think Penny's probably
Yeah,
better because the other options what Volo, I think, which is
yeah,
whatever. Penny's probably better because it allows you to get the card back in your
hmm,
hand. It has a little more versatility theoretically. And then
right.
yeah, I don't know. But anyway, I think Maractus is it's a pretty solid.
Hmm.
I feel like I really like Force Seal Stone. It's not as good as I thought it was going
Yeah.
to be. I thought it was going to be like insane because you
Hmm.
have like so many outs to it with Town Store. But I think it's still really nice. It allows you to kind of like cut corners in some other aspects of your deck list, and I
Hmm.
mean it's arguably the best tool in the game. If you saw my video where I ranked, essentially I didn't rank it. Oh, I kind of ranked every card, but I ranked certainly all the best cards, and Force Sealstone was definitely the best tool. Um,
Hmm.
and I feel like you gotta in a tool-based deck, it seems good to include.
Yeah, if you have a V, right, which you're including. So
Yeah, well,
I'm staying away
I
from
feel
the
like it's
V.
almost worth adding in a V, even just Pidgeot.
You
Not,
could. I understand the argument for it. I mean, I think it's reasonable not. So how many tools did you play, by the way?
I
Do
also
you
played
have
12,
12?
but instead of
Okay. So you
um,
cut one, what,
I,
charm, bravery charm?
I cut 2 Bravery Charm, and I have 2 Force Seals now.
Oh, that's right. Okay. Yeah. I will say the idea of once you're set up, I found getting set up was a little sketchy with the deck, to be honest, right? That's because a single prize deck like this is usually isn't the best thing. But once it was set up, it was really good. And it was good against single prize decks because then I didn't have to get rid of four tools each turn, right? So you get like two Snorlax down, two Liepard's down, or two Curlies down, a Maractus active, Maractus bench, and you're kind of cycling through your tools, Snorlax recovering, discarding. So if it's against a single prize deck, I was okay, but also against the multi-prize deck, since I was recovering four leftovers each turn, that base of 200, all I needed was a couple more tools to draw into, which was a pretty decent chance of that. And you can do that before or after you Iono, right? Depends. So you can kind of work that out. It's pretty good. And I also found through playing it, I would initially I was like trying to save the leftovers, but then I realized, hey, I want to get leftovers in the discard pile as fast as possible, usually, because that's the safest place to have them, right? Because if you get Iona or Judge, you lose the leftovers in the discard pile. You can just grab them back every turn. So that was kind of my learning curve there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't think there's too much to say about the deck. It's a fun deck to play. If you haven't played it, try it out.
Yeah.
Mess around, make your own build, but probably keep it something somewhere similar to these lists. Because I think the deck has serious potential, and
Hmm.
it's like I haven't really seen anyone else talk about it. I could have missed it. I saw people talk about Maractus when it came out, but not for a while. So I think it's better than Electrode as well. I think it's noticeably better than Electrode, but I haven't played Electrode either.
Yeah, I need to try Electrode. I think the 50 multiplier is just going to get those knockouts. That's part of what you want on the big Pokemon. So look, I really do think it's got some real potential. So I don't. Neither of us have probably perfected the 60, but it's definitely worth more attention that it's getting.
Yeah.
But we've covered enough of this, I think, right, for you. So
Yeah,
um,
it's fun, but
it is. People want to hear something besides Maractus, at least, I guess. So getting to the other topic. So one of the things I disliked with the game initially, and I still bothers me some, is the randomness within Pokemon TCG. Right? You have 60 cards. You can only play four of most cards. You're drawing a random seven to start. You're top decking some random card. So it's a big factor now. What I've learned, obviously, as you grow as a player, a big part of deck building is controlling the randomness, right? You're kind of obviously want the upside to do what you need to hit the numbers you need, but you also need to have it consistent enough, right? That's kind of part of the struggle, the challenge of Pokemon in building a deck.
yeah, I'd agree with that. Also, I think one thing about deck building, a bit off topic, but I think deck building is something that a lot of people, including myself, struggle with, and and for a while I didn't see the value of it either, because if you
Mm-hmm.
just net deck a list, sure, it could be a good list and you could win with it, but
Yeah.
you need to make it your own, and then because everyone has
Mm-hmm.
their different styles, and it's not like Pokemon's game that's been like optimized. The players haven't like
Right.
optimized their decks, so even if you didn't like if your list should be a little different. You should have your own style of play, which you'll
Yep.
develop, and you'll see that, and you'll figure that
Mm-hmm.
out some. I haven't like done that completely, but um, I've noticed that, especially with like control, where the lists are much farther from optimized, where both there's more room to
Mm-hmm.
optimize them because the skill ceiling's higher, and because less people play the deck, so less people have worked on
Mm-hmm.
lists that I really have to build my own control list, and if I don't, then oftentimes I'll it's a bit hard to play control.
Yeah, let me just build off that briefly before we get back to randomness. I think there's ways, three levels of deck building in a sense. One is strictly net decking, where you're not doing any building on your own. You're just grabbing it for someone else who did the successful, and that's not wrong. I don't criticize that. That's like almost level zero of deck building, right? Then
Yeah,
there's
and I do that all the
one.
time, and you do it too, right?
I do it too, and it's not a criticism, and it's a good way to kind of learn a deck that you want to or try it out. Then there's kind of where you tweak a deck list to what you like. Like I just recently worked on a Blastoise EX deck. There's a lot of people playing Blastoise EX out there, a lot of lists. So you can go to Limitless and other content creators, look at say five or six decks. Usually what I do is look at like the top five or six lists on Limitless. They're pretty similar. I see the differences and then kind of tweak it to what I think will suit my style and flow the best. So that's kind of modifying a deck list to your style. That's kind of level two. And then there's the level three, or however you want to sequence it, where you're just kind of starting a deck from scratch, like with the Maractus deck list, right? There really wasn't stuff out there. We each of us sat down on our own and just tried to work out a 60 on our own, and they all have value, I got to say. And the more I've done some decks from scratch, it is a skill you get better at. And when I started, it was my deck lists were complete garbage, I will say, and now they're just like half garbage perhaps or something. But they've improved a lot. So there's different levels to how much you want to customize a deck.
Yeah, one thing to say about the middle level of like taking a list and tweaking it, you want to
Hmm.
keep in mind like sometimes when you tweak a list, you'll take some cards out and be like, yeah, I don't need these cards, and then like looking back, like you're like in a game, you'll be
Yeah.
like, oh wait, I needed that card, and then you'll
Hmm.
kind of learn. But that's a great learning experience as well.
Right. And like you pick like two cards from deck A and two cards from deck B, but there might be a problem that the two cards from deck B don't work with the rest of deck A. So you start to learn the synergies that were there in the decks as you make changes, right? That were wrong changes. You learn just as much. as making good changes over time. So, and there is a process for decks like with the Ice Rider deck. That was a deck that was known. There were a lot of it was out there a lot. So to list to choose from, but ultimately I played it up to the point where all those little tweaks, I got to a 60 for a while where it was my 60 and it flowed the way I like. And when you get to a point with that with the deck, it's a lot of fun too.
Yeah.
But back to randomness, right? Were you going to say something off that before I
Uh,
kind of
no,
hijack
I
things?
wasn't. Well, I hijacked things.
Okay. Do you want to?
Um,
So do you?
yeah, I'll say so.
Uh,
Randomness. When people talk about randomness, there are two things. One of them is like coin flips, and similar
yes.
things to that, which are, I guess, rock paper scissors. That's like the only other thing like it. Which is that even in
Yeah.
standard? It might be. I
Um.
I don't
Oh, I
know.
haven't. Did it reverse rotate? I'm trying to remember now. I don't.
Um,
I can't
yeah, I mean,
recall.
people like
Doesn't.
never played any of the rock paper scissors cards. Anyway, I don't think any of them were like good. So
No,
yeah.
it was in
Anyway,
a theme deck if you remember if you played PTCGO, but other than that,
yeah.
not much.
But so pretty much like coin flips, and you have cards like say Cramomatic, which are coin flips, and
Hmm.
I think they're okay. They are randomness, but obviously there's randomness in like the shuffling of a deck, and so there's
Right.
always going to be some randomness in that. But then you have very swingy randomness in cards like say Chromatic, where if you flip heads, that's essentially discard an item from your hand. Uh, on a coin flip,
Hmm.
you search deck for any card, and if it's tails, it literally does nothing. Oftentimes, that item card you're going to be discarding is a card that could be decent. It could be like some ball search card, but instead you want to get a Battle VIP past turn one or something.
Right.
So if you flip heads, you're in a really good spot, and if you flip tails, you're in a really awkward spot. So when one singular coin flip like drastically changes the output of the game, it gets annoying. Same with Crushing Hammer,
Yeah.
not in this current meta, but in
Hmm.
past metas like the ADP Eternus meta, which in my opinion was actually an okay meta, but it could just be me looking. I mean, I like ADP, but not a
Yeah.
healthy card, but it's a it was fun. It won
Right.
every matchup, so that was good. But yeah, like in that
Well.
meta, Crushing Hammer was for many decks very impactful. Like
Yep.
if you got an edge removed, you could just like kind of lose. So things like that I think are
Right.
distinctly bad. Um, you can generally very clearly see that that's like not good for the game. They're not in the game too commonly. And like in this current meta, Crushing Hammer, heads versus tails on that isn't like game. It doesn't really change the game too much, which is
Well,
good.
right. Yeah, well, there's a lot of energy acceleration, and coin flip cards. Obviously, half the time you're not going to get you want, but like Pokemon Catcher, that when it's heads, it's a boss in essence, right? You gust up. That's a huge, boss on an item's huge. So that obviously it's a huge swing there. There's the Pokemon Search card that's still in standard, right? On a coin flip, you
Pokeball.
Pokeball, which
Yeah, I feel like Pokeball is generally outclassed. Because like what generally you're looking at these cards, a lot of people are very like risk averse. They don't want to play these coin flip based cards.
right.
But like you want to compare the bad to the good, and and then you compare it to like a different card. Like obviously you can compare Pokeball. Okay, Pokeball is essentially directly outclassed, but Capturing Aroma as well.
Well,
Um,
just what Pokeball does, because people might not remember it because
oh
it
yeah,
doesn't get
I feel like a
played,
lot of
right?
people know it,
But you
but
flip a coin onto an item. If heads, you search your deck for a Pokemon, reveal it, put it in your hand, shuffle your deck, right? So it searches for any one Pokemon, so which is obviously a tremendous card. If it didn't have the coin flip ability, it would be by far the best Pokemon search card in the game. So it's right. Again, it's a huge swing whether you hit heads or not. Again, though, is what I'll say.
yeah, I would say also Ultra Ball kind of it doesn't directly outclass. I mean, it kind of does, but
Yeah,
that searches
most
for
decks don't want to
anything.
discard two, though,
Yeah,
right?
but it's still pretty like it's pretty comparable.
Right. But look, if it didn't have the coin flip, you'd play four Pokeball every deck, pretty much. You play four Pokemon Catcher every deck if you didn't have the coin flip, almost guaranteed, right? Or at least a bunch of those, right? Because at this point, you play a couple boss every deck, and that's your supporter. So,
Yeah,
it so the randomness is big, right? Potentially, but the top decks avoid the randomness because they're good enough anyway without it. Um, I think right. There's the coin flip cards, and then there's the coin flip like the old Maractus deck where it was 50 per heads, right? Was it 50? I think.
60, I
Or what
believe.
was it 60? Okay, yeah, okay, that even better,
Yeah.
right? So that's like just leaning into the coin flips, right? You just flip, you get a lot of energy, and you flip a coin per energy. I've been playing actually the last couple days. I've seen the Pokemon. It's the EX Basic. Is it from the 151 that flips 4 coins for 3 energy,
Oh
100
yeah,
per?
Kangaskhan.
I've seen that
EX.
multiple decks lately. Not liking it. The first time I saw it, it one shot my Charizard EX.
Well, it
So
sounds like a
that's
skill issue.
randomness there. So they hit 4 heads on it, and it was like that was the only way that I was going to lose the game. But that there's our randomness there for you for sure.
Yeah. But then also like that's obviously not the most common thing, but then there's randomness with
Hmm.
just deck shuffling, but there's like
Yeah.
so much randomness that it kind of cancels out. What it's called like high variance. Like sometimes you get games where you just get really unlucky, or really lucky. But those aren't too common.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a normal curve, sometimes like most of the time it's probably some reasonable
Hmm.
amount of luck. But I think Pokemon, and I think the idea that you're getting at, this is my thought. It's kind of, I'm not trying to
Go
put
ahead.
words in your mouth, but I think that the amount of randomness means that like you and I are good players, but we're not like the best players in the world.
Hmm.
But we could beat the best players in the world probably at least 30 to 40% of the time, um, because of the randomness.
Yeah, with if but with both players have legitimate decks that are
Yes, and
reasonably
we're playing
competent.
like the same deck, some deck that like I'm confident in, but not like, you
Right.
know,
Which some ways it's good, some ways it's bad, right? I mean, obviously it's not good if you lose every time, but obviously you're not playing the worst player. You're not playing the best player most of the time either. So,
yeah, but I
um,
feel like you can a lot of times like the winner isn't determined by like skill as much.
mhm.
It's certainly determined some by skill. A good chunk. Certainly, if you're like if there's a very noticeable gap in skill level, you're gonna like the more
The
skilled
win
player will
percentage
win.
goes up.
Yeah, but
Right. I mean, because like if you look at Limitless, right, just for like the top decks, as long as they're highly played, they're not winning much above 50%. Partly because there's weaker players, but partly a 5%, difference in win rate is actually pretty significant, I think, in Pokemon, just because there's so much randomness. It means if you're 5% better as a player win rate or as a deck, you're significantly better, I think, in skill, probably, or quality of deck,
yeah,
the way it works out.
which means
But
that if you play like a best of like 101, the more skilled player will win.
yes,
But I don't really want to like die playing a game of Pokemon.
right. I mean, the two part of it is why randomness is bad. First, I will just say in the negative. First, who goes first is too important in the game. I don't like that.
It does vary by meta, I will say as well. But in
It
this current
does.
meta, and for quite a while now, it's been that going first is a substantial advantage.
Right. And most in 90% at least of decks want to go first, probably. So when we started playing with Welder and stuff, it was in format, there was almost a 50-50 split of decks that wanted to go first and second. Here, almost every deck wants to go first. And it's almost like you're going to win when you go first. At the end of turn one, also, partly because of randomness, you know who's going to win or not, or at least likely who's going to win. And that's not a good feeling, partly because the games are quick, too. That's where the randomness gets accentuated because the games with these multi-prizers, a couple knockouts and you win the game. Even more so when the V Maxes were dominant, right? Because two
Yeah.
knockouts, the game's over. You have like 4 turns. That's it.
Yeah. One thing I want to say is obviously you play mostly online. You play all online, right?
Yes, I
Uh,
haven't played an IRL game and it's been quite a while.
yeah, but I've been playing a little more IRL. And now that I've realized that there are a lot of games that both players don't do much. And you'll
Hmm.
stick that out, and then it becomes it's closer, and then randomness still
Hmm.
impacts the game, but going first
Yeah,
doesn't impact the game as much, which is interesting versus online. You like concede those games. One of
people
the
scoop
people,
very fast. I think
Mhm.
too fast, but yeah.
Yeah. So, um, but in person that's not as common. or I don't know, from what I've been playing in person, like casually.
Okay.
So there are so going into first versus second, like in idealized games where both
Hmm.
decks are operating at max capacity, if you go first, you probably win. But that's
Yeah.
not always the case. It's sometimes the case, probably more than it is fun, but it's not. It's not like as bad as people say. It's still not great.
Yeah, I mean, and part of what, why, look, I think there's good aspects of randomness, and I think having some randomness in the game is good. It serves with the idea if you want to reflect life, there's randomness in life for sure. So it's not a bad thing to have randomness in a game. Part of it is starting back when were first playing, it was the theme decks, and there weren't very optimized decks. They're fun to play, don't get me wrong, but not optimized decks, which meant the randomness could really punish you even more because didn't have good
Um,
search cards in it.
I think it's interesting because you're more likely to have like a bad hand in theme deck.
Yeah.
But with themed if you have a bad hand, there are still
Hmm.
reasonable shots that like you can play the game. You're not just all
Hmm.
of a sudden gonna you're not gonna get like donked
Not
necessarily.
usually. Right. It's a long game. They're single prize decks, so it's six prizes, so you had time to come back
Yeah, and
more
in
so.
theme decks, essentially probably like 90% of the game, your deck isn't operating at like max capacity
Hmm.
because you need to get essentially you need to get quite lucky for that to happen, and that's not the norm.
Yeah. Yeah. I I'm not sure if compared to say a Magic the Gathering, if you didn't like your starting hand, you could mulligan by choice and you draw one less card as a penalty for it. If an option like that wouldn't be good for Pokemon, let's say, because sometimes you just have a garbage start and you see it unless your opponent also gets garbage, which they're not usually going to, you've lost the game, right?
Um,
Um,
yeah, probably. It depends what deck you're running. If you're running more combo heavy decks, then yes. Which a lot of like stage two based decks will need multiple stage twos or
mhm.
things like that.
Oh, and the other card with randomness, which is one that probably bothers me the most, which we mentioned in the Maractus discussion, is Battle VIP Pass because that swings hugely, right? If you when you play in a deck, if you hit it, you're golden. If you hit a couple, wow, your life is good. And if you don't hit it at all, you can be in a lot of trouble. And that based on what random seven cards you start with, I it's a little bit bigger swing that I like. I gotta say.
Um, yeah, I think so. I think it's overvalued in the current meta. I think it's good, but
Hmm.
I personally think it's like um, I don't know. No, it's not a fun card, I'd say, but I think it's not like
No.
as good as people make it out to be. It's a good card. Some people think it's like super problematic. I think like searching two basics is like good, but you know,
It's not the
it's
greatest, but it's a huge swing. Like if Lost Zone hits two Battle VP pass on turn one, you can be in a lot of trouble when you're
uh
going against it.
yeah, that's
And
definitely
if they don't hit any Battle VP pass turn one, they're in a lot of trouble. And that's a lot of
I think you
randomness
I don't I
there.
think you can hit like nest balls too, like
Yeah.
uh and so you can like play other cards that don't have as much
Hmm.
swing to them, and then you have these like swinging cards, but they're not like I don't know. I still don't like Battle
All
VIP
right.
Pass.
Yeah. Although I found a deck that I like to play that liked that card. So, but that's
Wait, what
maybe a
is this? What
discussion.
is this deck?
All I'm looking at now. This is all right. This is its own discussion, and if you want us to discuss it, let us know. It's the beauty of what the best cards in format are right now, and that's stage two water decks. Stage two, which
Wait,
is
there's
Blastoise EX, because you play four
Lust.
Irida,
Uh,
right? So Irida gets you your rare candy and your water Pokemon, which is tremendous. Okay. And of
yeah,
course, with Irida, you get your Battle VIP Pass. So I play four Irida, four Battle VIP Pass, and you're setting up so much of the time with it. It's pretty crazy. And if you go second, you're almost guaranteed at least one Battle VIP Pass.
yeah,
And then I play the Curly Engine, so I just toss away the Battle VIP Pass later. It it actually, it's got its downsides the deck, but Irida stage two water, look out. If there's a water that's really good, I think
like
we're
Chin
in
Pal,
for some trouble.
Excalibur.
A stage 2 attacker. Okay, Excalibur
Okay.
is not a
Yeah.
stage 2
Because
attacker.
I think
No,
I'll
but
say this. I've said this before. I think Chin Pal, Excalibur is probably the BDRF right now.
mhm,
Um, I think it's a. I think it's certainly debatable, but I'm not a major fan
mhm.
of Gardevoir. I've never thought Gardevoir was like super broken. I've understood it's like good. I mean, I think the cards are very strong cards, but
Yeah.
um, I think Chimpanzee Excalibur just can do so much right now.
It does. It does. Look, there's a lot. Look, neither of us are really competitive players, right? You've done IRL, but you're not doing competitive IRL. You've done a little bit of tournament play online, but there's a good number of very strong decks out there,
Yeah.
which is a good place.
Mhm.
So anyway, so back to randomness. I think the randomness. At this point, I will say I think randomness is still a little heavier than I would like in the game, but I don't know a solution to it. I gotta say, so it probably is what it is, and we live with it. What any concluding thoughts for you?
I'm trying to. So I'm thinking about Magic. I didn't play very much Magic, but
Hmm.
I tried it a little while ago, and you also did. And
Yeah.
um, actually, no, this isn't like worth. I didn't really know what was going on, honestly. So maybe this
Okay.
isn't really worth talking about. But I thought, um, yeah, I don't know.
You need,
I don't know. I was randomness is kind.
it
I
was
think
you threw out the topic, and you just wanted to see what happened.
I think randomness is like because you have worse card draw in Magic. I mean, it seems like
You
really
do.
horrendous. And even in
Oh
Yu-Gi-Oh,
yeah.
there's the pot of greed meme, which you don't know probably, but
No, I don't.
it's
I
it's
mean,
so pretty much in Yu-Gi-Oh, there's a card that's like draw two, and it's like super broken,
hmm
or something like
okay.
that.
Yeah, the people comment like on Magic too. Like if this card was in, like if Hop, which gets mocked, right, in Pokemon, and Hop's now rotated, so people don't know that, but it draws three, right? There's a bunch of cards.
Pneumonia, or pneumonia.
I don't think it's
It's
pneumonia.
not
That's a
pneumonia.
disease, but
But
it's
I always call it pneumonia because it's
what's it
very
start
similar.
with,
It's
by the
pneumona, I
way?
think. It might be. I don't know if it starts with an N or a P. It's
Okay.
and oh yeah, it starts with Nemo. So
Okay.
pneumona. It's not.
So
It's not pneumonia, but I always call it pneumonia.
all right. So yeah, there it is. So draw three, which isn't good in Pokemon, but these other cards would be huge. And look, the card games are different. Pokemon, which does get back to the randomness discussion, I will say, to tie it back. Like I played some Magic, and Magic is a game where you kind of you get very little draw. So you just deal with the idea behind it is you just deal with the random cards you draw into, and that's kind of the style of game it is. And I kind of like Pokemon decks like that, so maybe that has some appeal for me there. But Pokemon does have a lot of search where you dig through your deck like you play a Pokemon search. You go through your deck, find a Pokemon and such, and draw with Professor's research. So Pokemon does have the ability to kind of get through the randomness, I guess is what I'm saying, because it does have a lot of digging and drawing.
Yeah, and I'll actually talk about Marvel Snap here, which I played, which has I
Okay.
believe it's 12 card decks, and throughout the game you'll see 9 cards, which is
Hmm.
obviously it's a lot of it's most of your deck.
You see most right.
And so, or something like that. I don't remember if those numbers are, but pretty much that means most of the time you'll be able to pull off your combos, but when you miss, it's really
Hmm.
bad. So, and that's
Yeah.
kind of what's like with Pokemon versus Magic. You're not going to pull off, I guess, like these combos like all the time, super fast, consistently. Maybe I
Yeah.
said it. I don't know exactly that about Magic, but things are a little slower versus Pokemon. It's faster paced, which I really enjoy, and you
Hmm.
like hit harder and stuff. But then if you miss, then you get it's like it feels really bad. So it's like it works most of the time, but when it doesn't, it feels bad.
Hmm. Although when you say faster paced, it's getting off topic. It's faster in that you get more done in a turn, so each turn gets more done, but each turn takes a lot longer.
Well, no, in Magic, there's that weird thing where you like wait between like every time you play a card or whatever.
Well, there's interactions, but like
But
because
then and
there's
then
a
when your
talk.
opponent's like but then when I'm like AFK during my turn, I don't realize that like I'm supposed to like press done like
Well,
10 times
right
during
in,
my
in
turn.
Pokemon, you can kind of go asleep when your player's playing, right? You just kind of keep a half an eye on it,
Yeah, I
right?
like on during my opponent's turn, that's like when I do like my homework.
Right, or people are looking on their phones and stuff, and that's partly why Pokemon games you play rope and you wait for unfortunately almost 30 seconds half the time before they make a play, but that's another issue. Um, but no, but like Gardevoir, which with the curly is and all, you dig through your deck a lot, but it makes each turn takes a long time, right? They're making a lot of actions. You play against Mew, once again, they have like really long turns, so it gets through the deck, but a turn is a long turn, so
Yeah.
plus and minus there.
Mhm.
So anyway, so is that enough for randomness for you? Do we cover the topic to your satisfaction?
Yeah. So now I think, see, I got a nice transition here. You're ruining the moment.
I
Because
apologize.
randomness is obviously within a game, there's randomness, but then when you queue into the game, there's randomness with the
Yeah,
matchup. So,
that is true.
and some matchups are very swingy, because of everyone's favorite mechanic, weakness, which you
Yeah, which
criticized in
is
the
it was
past.
one of the three things I didn't like. So just
What's the third thing?
randomness,
Beef?
weakness, and the third one, no, the expense of it. And I think you
Oh.
probably don't like that either, right? Especially
Yeah, I think
IRL,
in
it's
live
pretty
it's
pricey.
fine. And
Yeah,
like some people are like, yeah, I only have to spend like $100 to go, and then when I play competitive, I only spend like $10,000 a year. It's so cheap, and I'm like,
right. I mean,
what?
Pokemon's so cheap that compared to the other card games, because it's only you can maybe get, for $100 you can get a deck, which is good
I
for
think it's actually less. I think
a
it's
three
actually
month period.
$50.
It
And you can
is
get very good decks. I think, but it's still not like it's not
compared
pocket
to other
change.
card games where you're spending like $400, right?
Yeah.
And obviously, if that's what you're playing IRL, you don't want to just play one deck. Plus, you're going to need to switch up sometimes. So it's an expensive game to look. Pokemon's making money, so as a business, they're highly successful, and people pay the money. So hats off to Pokemon,
Yeah,
I
there's like
guess,
the
in
Van
that
Gogh
regard.
thing, right? Because they
Yes,
brought Van Gogh in to make some cards for them. So
yeah, they brought him
they
back to
first
life.
um
Yeah.
but no, they had some like Van Gogh cards or something inspired by Van Gogh.
Yes.
And there was like a big problem with like scalpers, as there is. And
Well,
so
and they were being sold. I think the advertising was misleading, but they were the one ad seemed to imply the only time you're going to be able to get them at the one museum in the Netherlands, and that was it. And therefore, like, it was a semi riot broke out like the first day with people just grabbing Pokemon products from the shelves and stuff.
yeah, I
So
think but that's not like Pokemon's not like, oh no, there have too well actually they are. They have too many people buying their product. Like it's crazy. So
right,
they're succeeding.
yeah, they
Yeah.
they have not blunted the excitement for the game. But anyway, but live, the cost is, I don't pay any money in live, and the economy is pretty good. So that in live, that's about the one good thing for live, I guess we have going for it.
Yeah, which is quite good, I'd say.
But yeah, so I'm looking at my Blastoise EX deck because right, that's I need to play it where it's actually pretty good, I will say, right, and
Mine's
it's
not. You need to share. I
330
played mine a little
HP.
differently.
It's got solid shell, takes 30 less damage from attackers, huge, almost impossible knockout, but it's weak to lightning. So that means if you come from some ride on deck, you should probably just scoop, right? Oh, and I play Palkia too. Oh, wait, it's weak to lightning too. Oh, I just lose instantly to a
Oh,
lightning
I
deck.
play
Is
Pidgeot in
that really
mine, which is also weak to lightning.
so? So this huge swing, right, between do I hit into a lightning deck or not? Is that a good thing or not? As part of it.
Yeah, and so obviously the TCG this gets back to the idea that it's based off of the video game, except
Hmm.
um I think well okay one thing I'd say the weakness like is very swingy and can make games unfun. But I
Yeah.
think this very much comes down to the way that the video game transfers over to the TCG.
Okay.
First of all, there are 10 types in the TCG, um, which
Right.
is well, it's
Sounds
not
like a good
actually,
name to me.
yeah, it's not actually, believe it or not, it's not actually the origin of my name. It just worked out very well.
Yeah.
But there are 18 types in the video game, so they like moved them. And then weakness is generally balanced in the video game, I think. I think not all
Hmm.
the types are equal, but they're something and then like I think it's all right but then the way it's been like squished down into the TCG they're not all like equal so like they don't all
Hmm.
hit the same some like don't really hit any types for weakness and some hit more types for weakness and so like
Right.
it's not super fair. But anyways,
Yeah.
and then the video game, you have a bunch of Pokemon, and you're encouraged to have type coverage in order to be able
Hmm.
to counter other Pokemon of other types because there's an energy. Versus in the TCG, you're
Right.
encouraged to essentially have anti-type coverage, where you have well, your Pokemon of one type because they have that energy type. Certainly
Right.
type coverage is a thing that exists. But like, so the one example that I can think of, as you're saying, a water deck weak to lightning.
Hmm.
The one deck, probably the best water deck weak to lightning. Some are weak to metal, but the best one
Right.
is gonna be Inteleon VMAX, which is weak to lightning. Except lightning is weak to fighting, and fighting you have Urshifu. So you
Hmm.
put Urshifu in that deck, you get your
Right.
type covered. Okay, but then Urshifu is weak to um, it's weak to Psychic, right? So Psychic, notably Mew VMAX. Again, Psychic can be weak to different things. Fighting can be weak to different things. It's a little strange. But
Yeah.
Psychic's Mew VMAX is weak to Dark. So then you play Drapion. So then you have your type coverage again. Um, so unless your opponent's Mew VMAX is running like Glam Zapdos V, you should be all good. So I think that's like the only example of type coverage. It's not the only example, but it's by far the main example of type coverage, because of the way the energy
Right.
works. Most matchups are not like most weakness-based matchups are not really winnable for the other person,
Right. So
or harder to win.
it's hard to win, and certainly when certain decks are popular, um, there's just a bunch of decks that aren't viable, right? Like when Palkia came out, Palkia V Star was very good, still is solid. Looking at one now in my Blastoise deck, so no complaints there. You couldn't play a fire deck, right? You could, you're just going to lose. So it's kind of, I don't know if I like that, right? It just wipes out whole types. Certainly, if we had 18 types in the TCG, it probably will be a little better.
It'd be a bit more
You're go-
confusing as well. So
it
also in
might
the
be too
the
confusing.
video
Yeah.
game, which is cool, but each type has multiple weaknesses and multiple resistances.
Hmm.
Versus each card only has at most one weakness and one
Right.
resistance. Resistance essentially doesn't matter at all. It can matter some, but it's
Right.
essentially non-existent. The
Right.
only
I mean, sometimes I get into trouble because I ignore it, and then there's that occasional time it matters, and I'm like, "Oh, I just missed the knockout."
Yeah, but the only types that are resisted are fighting. One of the types that resists it is actually psychic, which hits it for weakness anyway, so it doesn't really matter. The
Yeah.
other type that and then Colossus also can resist it or be weak to it, which is kind of weird.
Yeah.
And then you also have grass, which is resisted by metal. Yeah, grass
Hmm.
isn't like I don't think it needs that. Um, but I think resistance is interesting, but it's not
Yeah.
used very much. And then weakness, if it was more in depth, I believe there actually were some cards that were weak to multiple types. Let me check.
Okay.
But not they're like a long time ago because they're types that Pokemon that
Hmm.
had multiple types. They're dual type Pokemon.
Yeah.
But they do they when if I search them up, it'll show up older like like the capital EX, right?
In live,
Yeah.
you mean? Are
Yeah.
they in the database? If it's in the database, you hit format all, you'll get everything.
Okay,
Even
yeah. Oh, these aren't weak to multiple types. There might have been Pokemon weak to multiple types now. Um,
okay.
yeah.
I mean, one of the things you're pointing out, which is I would like to see things adjusted. I would think is weakness is a huge deal. It's two times. In one sense, it started back with these low HP Pokemon, so two times wasn't, this 330
I don't
HP
think it was
Pokemon
always two times. I'm gonna look.
was it? Whereas resistance is so small, right? Resistance is like 30. It's not a multiplier at all. It's a very small amount of like a 330
Oh,
Pokemon, which
maybe it
has no
was.
resistance,
It was
but
mostly two times.
right. So resistance is a very small percentage of the HP, whereas weakness is a huge multiplier. I would like to see probably the brought into line a little more, preferably seeing weakness dropped. I know there's arguments made why weakness is important.
Yeah, I can
Um,
keep stuff in check. Like Mew VMAX was kept in check by Drapion. Although honestly, like Drapion
right.
isn't necessarily like, a weakness attacker. Sure, it uses weakness, but it pretty much just says kill a Mew, which is fine. But they could have just had it done like more damage. Like they could have literally had it done like just twice as much damage or something. Like it's very
Yeah.
specifically a counter to Mew.
Right.
And they've done it through the use of weakness, but they could have used not weakness as well.
Right. And honestly, in terms of Mew with Genesect and Meloetta Fusic Energy, they probably shouldn't have made all those cards quite so good, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that part of that I think was poor design on their part, I will
Mhm.
say. So if weakness is a way to cover up bad design decisions, that's not good. I know that's the main reason it gets there is to keep certain decks from being too good. There's some value. I mean, certainly there's if you're going into competitive play, guessing the meta in large part becomes based upon weakness, right? What you should play, and if you think is that a good part of the game, or should that not? How much should that be a factor? I'm not sure. I'm a big fan of that. If you can do it well, congratulations, but I don't think that's the most interesting part of the game. Looking at Aggron VMAX, so 330 HP Pokemon, it's weak to fire, of course. It's a metal, does obviously doubles that, but the resistance is -30 to grass. It's just, the resistance is so trivial compared to the weakness. I just,
Yeah, I mean,
it's
resistance
weird.
feels like an afterthought. I think it's been toned down in terms of like the types of resistance. I feel like it should either be in the game or not be in the game. I personally would like it to be in the game, but if they wanted to
Hmm.
remove it, I wouldn't have a problem with that. But right now
Yeah.
it feels like an afterthought, and it's a bit underwhelming. And weakness is
Yeah.
honestly, I think weakness like in the meta we were talking about before, where you and I just both joined the game, and this
Hmm.
was true for a little while. Pokemon weren't one-shotting each other; they were two-shotting each other. But
Right.
this meant, or especially during like the VMAX era, which we're I guess
Yeah.
out of, but there are some VMAXs. But they were hitting like the mid 200s, which is not enough to one-shot another VMAX. But then with weakness, it,
Right.
it is. So then um, so for example, there was Victini and there was Ice Rider and there
Hmm.
was Zacian. Zacian was a V, but it was able to tank some hits, not necessarily from Ice Rider, but pretty much in those matchups, you got these like weakness triangles, which are kind of funny
Yeah.
for like meta stuff, but in those matchups, like there was no interesting decision making because no matter how well each player played, the winner was
Hmm.
essentially decided by before the game began.
Right. Which in a sense kind of goes back to the randomness, like you're saying, right? Which deck did you choose versus what deck you matched up against, right? Like Eternatus at 3 VMAX at 340 HP was a monster. Maybe it wasn't the most fun deck to play against or the most exciting deck to play, but it was but then against fighting decks, you got cut through. So, eh, should
Well,
they
okay,
maybe
that's a little different. Because the
because you hate
fighting decks,
Eternatus,
well,
I
no,
know.
no, the fighting deck, the main fighting deck was
Yeah.
Urshifu, right? Which didn't actually
Yeah.
one-shot it.
That's true. That's true. And that
That
didn't
that
come
makes,
out till a little bit later, too.
yeah, but it was intended to counter it.
Yeah.
But it did counter it because it picked off the Crobats very easily. So
Right. Right. And could take out those low HP bench ones too. While it was hitting into the active too.
yeah.
Um,
One other question. Do you have more to say about weakness or?
no, no, not necessarily.
Okay, so do you
Okay.
think 10 is the right number of types in the game? Like, do you think the types, um, do you think is
Well,
good? Obviously, it's a weird question and it doesn't necessarily matter that
and
much. But
well, I mean, obviously, certainly for a channel name, it's ideal. So the game might need it. But well, I would say honestly, in some sense, there's 8 types in the game. There's 8 types of basic energy, right? So
yeah,
in one sense, that's the number of types. The one is colorless, which in a sense is what normal in the video game, but it's really no type in a sense in the way I think about the TCG. And then dragon is kind of what it's a hybrid type is what it means.
yeah,
It's
and I feel
in
like
essence.
Dragon is also it's been a bit underwhelming. Like it's seen some play, but um when you're looking at a dragon Pokemon, you kind of look at it as is it a hybrid? But then they haven't really like you're not going to play these Pokemon. You want to obviously pair it with Pokemon of that type, of those two types, but we haven't seen that too much,
Yeah.
except for that Rayquaza. Like with Rayquaza, you can play it with either lightning stuff or you can play it with fire stuff, which is kind of fun now.
Right. Well, I mean, look, dragon. The fact that you need multiple energies is really tough, right? It makes it awkward. And
Yeah.
so also just looking here right now in standard, there are 66 dragon Pokemon according to the filter I'm getting on live. So
Oh wow.
that's not a lot, right? So let's see, grass type, which we know is under 295 cards, huge difference there. Fire type, what do we got? 170. Well, fire types are relatively low, but
One
it's
thing, yeah,
still
with
there's
Dragon, they
not a
don't
lot of
put
dragon.
Dragon Pokemon in every set. And they don't. If they
No,
do, they don't put a lot.
were there dragon in 151 by the way? No, there weren't,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah.
Oh,
Um,
were there
yeah,
dragons in the
there's
original?
Dragonite. Dragon Pokemon weren't originally in the TCG, but in the video game, and they've gone back and like changed the types of Pokemon in the video game as well. I think I don't know the exact details, but yeah, there's Dragonite.
Okay, there's Dragonite. That is, yeah. Okay, we have that line. So that those three Pokemon. Okay, just I wasn't sure there, and I haven't seen anyone try Dragonite, so maybe that could be your next video there.
Maybe.
Gives free retreat cost all your Pokemon.
I
So
know, I know.
counter to Leafy on VMAX. But so I mean, so is weakness necessary? Do you think in that argument, or do you think weakness is a little too big a deal?
I don't
Or
think weakness is. I honestly don't think weakness is necessary. So oh yeah, one thing about the types is I feel like the types are just kind of random. They well obviously like they're based on what the Pokemon do and stuff like that, but
yeah,
I feel like it'd be more interesting if each type had an identity. So when you look at the GLC,
hmm
GLC obviously it's type based. Your deck only plays one type. Um,
yeah,
and it plays a variety of Pokemon of that type. So that means that each GLC type kind of has some identity, and they do, but they definitely like say you want to play spread. There are a lot of types that do spread or control.
yeah.
Um,
hmm
and then a lot of them are just like big damage, and a lot of them kind of do the same thing, which to me makes it'd be more interesting if each type had a bit more of an identity. Um, and they don't. I don't think.
Okay. Yeah, I mean,
No,
individual
actually, no.
Pokemon
Some of them
have.
do. I'd say they're probably like some are better than others pretty consistently. Like
Okay.
water is good, psychic is good,
Yeah,
grass
grass
is
is not.
like always bad.
That's not really the type of identifier you'd like to see for types, right? Good types versus bad types.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I mean, individual Pokemon have identities, right? Over the different versions of a particular Pokemon tend to have themes, but types don't as much. The one thing with weakness, which I think we do need to bring up. Well, first off, you can have different weaknesses within the same type, at least for some things. Like I was saying, the
yeah,
Blastoise deck is all lightning weak, but there are the metal weak
yeah,
water
like
ones as well.
Shampoo or whatever, or
Right. So
Baxcalibur
you
as
could
well.
try that. But then the other thing, which is the new mechanic, the Terra, with the terastallizing, where they change types, right? Like Charizard, of course, we see that everywhere. Charizard EX goes from fire to
The Charizard
darks.
DX from Obsidian Flames as well
Right,
specifically.
right. And there's the 151 now that stays as fire type, but so it changes type and it changes weakness. So maybe that's going to make the weakness situation a little more interesting, right? If
Yeah.
you have a
Mhm.
deck that can has flexibility, but using the same energy too, because that's part of what the difficulty is. You have different types to counter weakness, but then as you spread out the energy types, things get awkward.
Yeah, I think honestly Charizard or not I mean all the Terra Pokemon of different
hmm
types kind of
Yeah.
give the typing like some meaning. That being said, like in a Charizard deck now it's pretty much like you barely play any fire Pokemon. So you're not even
Right.
like you're mostly just now a dark deck. You do have some fire things, but like grass is good against Charizard. It's obviously different, but it's not necessarily type coverage, it's just type change. So I think it would be cool if we saw, honestly,
hmm
if we saw like the same card, if we saw like this Charizard EX that a bunch of them had the same text and do the same thing, except they're on
hmm
a bunch of different types. So you can play the Dark Charizard or Lightning Charizard or Fire Charizard, and they all do the same thing, except they give you different type coverage.
Yeah. I mean, now I wouldn't want to see that on a Charizard because Charizard's a very strong
Yeah.
Pokemon.
Well, in
So,
general, they did that for a bunch. The big issue there is then you have like your set's gonna have like 1,000 cards in it, which isn't a problem for live. Well, I mean, it could be a problem for live because like anything is a problem
mhm.
for live. But in person, if you're like, yo, I want to get every card in the set and it has like 1,000 cards, that's a
Well,
problem. But and like
well,
logistically,
but
it's kind
that's
of
not. But that's
strange.
good for Pokemon, right? They love to
Yeah,
print
that's
poke
true. That's
cards, and
true.
people keep buying them. So
Next set, we're
Pokemon
gonna see
probably
we're
should
gonna see like
adopt this and blame 10 types if that's what happened. They have types. Every card comes out in every type.
yeah, next set is 1,000 cards and it's all Charizard.
Wow, and collectors are going to buy them by the
Everyone.
boatfuls. So it,
Yeah.
it will, yeah, they'll
I,
be
I
just
think that
printing money.
yeah, pretty much. I think that's about it for today. Anything else you
Yeah.
have to add? There.
No, I think no, I think we covered it. We got our opinions out there. So randomness, weakness, they're part of the game, good and bad. And hey, play Maractus. Don't forget about that, right?
It's a banger deck.
It's got a lot of potential, but okay. So thank you all for listening. Hopefully you have a good week. You've had a good week. Enjoy some Pokemon. Hopefully live works all week. We can always cross our fingers there. If you like us, comment, subscribe, comment, put it on the videos, which will, if you're on YouTube, if you're on a podcast player, which we're there too, our link to the YouTube should be in the description. And again, take care.
One last thing.
Yes,
If you're still recording,
I am.
do you know what a Maractus is? Like what the Pokemon is? Do you know what the two words it is are?
Well, the
Like,
one is cactus.
that is
I'm,
true.
I'm pretty confident about that. Let me take a look real quickly. I didn't. All right. So Maractus, this is a little bonus time for the
I'm
podcast,
pretty sure
Joe.
I'm right on this. It'd be
So
very
cactus.
embarrassing if I was wrong.
So it's the. Oh yes, I remember you told me. You said it was maracas, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And I don't really see the maracas. I got to say, as I'm looking at the art here, but
Well, its hands are like maracas,
I
kind
guess
of.
so.
You know.
I don't. So there you go. So that's your piece of Pokemon trivia for the week. So
Yeah.
you can impress your friends and family with that information, assuming it's correct.
Yep. See ya.
Bye.